Hello, this is our live stream service on Good Friday. In the normal run of things, whatever normal is now, we would, as congregations from a range of denominations, there will be about 40, 50 of us down at White Strands car park, and we would journey around the town doing various prayers, hymns, and readings about the Passion of Christ. We conclude in the church. We'd give out normally around 200 or so hot cross buns with a blessing on them. Well, we can't do any of that now, and so we have to try a different format. And it struck me, let's bring out the Stations of the Cross that the school children did. Caroline Flage, about 10 years ago, did a workshop with pupils for Holy Week, and they spent a couple of days doing these wonderful Stations of the Cross. And every Lent we put them around in the window sills in the church. They've kept very well, and they're beautiful and very precious to us. It makes me think about the passing of time, because those year 5, 6 pupils, well, they'll all be adults now. So maybe you watching today, maybe you did one of these, and this is something you participated in. So we're going to explore the 14 Stations of the Cross. I'm going to say a little prayer at each one and a very brief thought. We should be about a quarter of an hour. Later on this afternoon at 3, I'll do another live broadcast, and I'm going to take one of the big wooden crosses from the church, place it here, and I'm going to pin to it prayer requests. So if you have prayer requests, put them in the comments and we'll write them out, and they will be put onto the wooden cross. I'm going to begin by lighting a candle. Christ is the light of the world. It is his light we acknowledge. And so the first station of the cross, Jesus meets Pilate. I've put on our Facebook page a YouTube short 10-minute drama done in a contemporary style, like a medieval mystery play, about the Pilate remembering, regretting the judgment that he made on Christ. And the drama does it very well, because the old man now can do nothing but continually, as if he had OCD, wash his hands. Remember, Pilate washed his hands. He wanted not to have the guilt upon him. He wanted somehow to circumnavigate what was happening. And let's pray then for all those who come to face and meet challenges, who come head on, who are humbled. The big part of our story is that the victim becomes the victor. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. And in the second station, Jesus takes the cross. Crosses are everywhere. A friend of mine who, before ministry, was a jeweller, said he was approached by a lady who asked for a cross as a piece of jewellery. And she said, "No, not that one, not that one, not that one. I want the one with the man on it. What's his name?" Well, what's his name has turned everything upside down. by taking on the cross, the symbol of horror and terror becomes our central symbol of hope. I often get school children when they come into the church to see how many crosses they can count in the building. They're everywhere. The cross becomes the centre of the world, the axis upon which everything turns. Jesus invites us to take up our cross too, saying that his yoke is easy, his burden light. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. And the third station, Jesus falls. If you've been to the Holy Land, if you've been to Jerusalem, no doubt you'll have done the stations of the cross, that holy path. And you realise what a perilous trek it was. Probably on market day, going through the streets, being jeered, being humiliated, having to take this enormous piece of wood. We can only but imagine the horror of it, the burden that he took for you and for I. The first step in the recovery process in AA is we admit that we are powerless and that things have become unmanageable. And the second step is we turn to him, we turn to that higher power, to God himself, that he may save us. And so let's acknowledge that in the carrying of the cross and the falling, God has done a great thing for us. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Jesus meets his mother. In Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, I think there's this most sublime moment where the figure of Christ turns to his mother, who is on the Via Dolorosa, and he looks at her in the eyes. She's crying. He's in agony. And the quote he gives is from Revelation. It's very clever the way the director has done this. And he says, "Mother, behold, I make all things new." Eden is restored, the heavenly city opened to us through this enormous sacrifice. Nothing we could do could bring us to that place. He was the lockmaster. He had the key. Mother, I make all things new. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. The fifth station, Simon of Cyrene helps Jesus. Well, if you've watched the film Ben-Hur, you'll see this presented, I think, using artistic license. Prince Ben-Hur becomes Simon of Cyrene. He is the one who takes the cross in that moment. We're invited in our salvation for it to be a partnership as well. The wonderful thing about the film, I think, is that moment when Ben-Hur, having been falsely accused, is it Marcellus, his former best friend, for attempting something on the life of the new governor, Pilate. He is put on a chain gang, and as they come into the Galilee, in scorching weather, in the unforgiving heat, he is denied, unlike the others, water. He falls to the ground, and Charlton Heston does this so well. Maybe I'll aim to put it up on the Facebook page, the clip. He says, "God help me. God help me." At that point, the carpenter runs out of his shop and gives him water. You don't see Christ's face, but you see the look between the gaze, the compassion. Christ caresses the head of Ben-Hur like a father holding a child. And the centurion comes to break it up. And Christ looks at the centurion as if he is looking deep into his soul. And the man steps back. I'm reminded of that incident also. It's a similar kind of power that one sees in St. John's Gospel when Jesus says, "I am he," and his betrayers come to get him. They are astonished by the power of his voice. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Amen. And then from the non-biblical tradition, Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. And there are many legends and stories around this, including the idea that the Veronica is a sacred cloth which has a sort of blood imprint of Christ's face. But here, I suppose we can come to that point. We remember, how will the memory of this impinge upon us? Is it just another day, Good Friday? Some years ago, a parishioner said to me, "Why do we have to have Good Friday? Can we just not ignore it and go to Easter Day, the fluffy bunnies, the empty tomb, the resurrection, the chocolate and all of that, and ignore this terrible, terrible thing?" I mean, if only he'd lived a few more years, we'd have had so much more wisdom. Well, of course, well-meaning as that is, it's to completely miss the point. The whole point of the New Testament is the cross. How does that cross imprint upon you and I? What are its truths? We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your sacred cross you have redeemed the world. The seventh station, Jesus falls again. I recall at one of these walks of witness carrying the cross through Fore Street, and someone at the coffee shop said, "Vicar, that looks dangerous." Good Friday's a strange day for us. I mean, it's the Easter holidays. There are lots of people coming for a break. And yet kind of jarring alongside this is this incredibly powerful, sad story with a few of us trying to tell that story, trying to engage people with that. And I couldn't help myself. You know me, occasionally my mouth goes ahead of me. Was it the right thing to say? Well, I said, yes, it is very dangerous. It has conquered the world. Christ falls again. Do you know that in the heart of God is Good Friday? It can never be erased within the Holy Trinity. I think that comes out when you read the book, The Shack. That Jesus didn't ascend to the Father and say, for goodness sake, don't send me there again, and I'm going to need some post-traumatic counselling to get over that. That memory, those wounds are there for all eternity. It is the only, I think I said this yesterday, it is the only bit of technical wizardry that we have in heaven is the nail marks on his hands, his feet and his side. It's the only thing that is brought from earth to heaven of our own making, and that should shock us. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. And the station number 8, Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. Remember, he says, weep not, women. It's very easy for us to picture Jesus, I think, simply as somebody who came along and said a series of nice things. A sort of mind, body, spirit, new age guru type person. All you need is love, etc. But particularly towards the end of the gospel, much of Christ's own sayings are prophetic, hard, challenging to the church. He says that he is the vine, we are the branches, and if we don't produce fruit, lop us off. That's quite an interesting thought for the church at the moment, I think. So many of his sayings are actually challenging. We often think of the New Testament as soft and the Old Testament as harsh, but actually open it up and you'll find that they're quite balanced out actually, and the Old Testament has lots of soft and lovely and intimate expressions of God, while the New has a very challenging, very, very apocalyptic, a sense that things are changing, things are coming, get over it, get with it. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Station 9, Jesus falls for a third time. In many of our stories, films, legends of heroes, there is that pattern that we see in the Passion, that things get a lot worse before they get better, that there is a sort of climactic point. And in the Stations of the Cross, we're beginning to reach that. This is the point when we are challenged the most. I'm not a marathon runner, but those I've spoken to about this, those who I've heard their stories about doing this, is that, it's into that 2/3, 20 miles in, that it begins to really grate, that you have to start making that decision. Do I carry on? Do I go forward? What energy do I have left? I feel exhausted, consumed. How do I go forward? Is that where Christ is at this point? Where are we in this pandemic crisis? At what point of the journey are we at as a country, as a community here? It's difficult to know. But we can know that he has been our pioneer. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Station number 10, Jesus is stripped. The indignity of it. Do you know that for many centuries, Christians never portrayed the cross because of the horror of it? I mean, the first few centuries, crucifixion was a normal part of Roman policing. It was particularly meted out to slaves. In fact, in Tom Holland's book Dominion, in one of his opening chapters, he has this horror story. And it's the point where he began to realise that our civilization is not built on Rome and Greece, but it is built on Paul and Christ. Paul's interpretation of Christ, Christ's power. And what it was is at the edge of the city of Rome, there had been so many crucifixions. I mean, in terms of, I think, over generations, you're talking hundreds of thousands of slaves were disciplined in this most ignoble, horrific way. That the ground was actually warm with the gases from decomposing bodies. And some rather sick, clever Roman noble realised that it would actually make quite a nice heated swimming pool. So the Romans bathed in heated water, spa water, created by the thermals from the decomposing bodies of crucified slaves. And they largely were, if not ignorant, they couldn't care less. And that's why Holland in his book says, we are the successors of Jesus, and Paul's organisation of that, and Peter structuring of the church. We're not the successors of Rome and Greece. Jesus is stripped. This should shock us. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. And now to the final four. Station 11, Jesus is nailed to the cross. Again, in Mel Gibson's The Passion, he insisted that it was his hand that drove the nail in the special effects of the simulated crucifixion. It was his hand as centurion that was at the end of the hammer. And maybe for a large part of Christian history, this was a kind of normal understanding that we are all complicit in this, that in the Passion plays that we cry rightly, crucify him, and that we don't wash our hands like Pilate did, but we enter into the very depths of the awfulness of what men and women can do. I mean, that's one of the horrors of Auschwitz. I think C.S. Lewis picks this up quite well, that those concentration camps needed an awful lot of bureaucrats. You know that there were thousands of people who wrote pretend letters to Jewish families in America. There were people who ordered the gas, who ordered the wood, who ordered the tools, who did all the procurement, who drove the lorries, who drove the trains. This wasn't just about a few prison guards and a Ralph Fiennes awful creature running a sordid death camp. There was a good portion of the nation involved in this, of the state. Many ordinary people turning a blind eye, doing the paperwork, making a bit of money. We are all involved in this. Sadly, we have all invested in this. And we can but say, Kyrie eleison, Lord, have mercy. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Station number 12, the calamity of it. Jesus dies on the cross. Is this the end of our story? Well, no, we know that God will vindicate this and that he will be transformed, become the new Adam for us. In the Gospel according to St. Mark, the veil of the temple is torn in two. The Holy of Holies, a space not much bigger than this here, but marked off at the very epicenter, like a series of Russian dolls, was this cosmic curtain showing the heavens. Apparently it was a beautiful thing to behold, and you could see it from almost any angle of the city. Only the high priest, once a year on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, could go into the Holy of Holies and make atonement, or attempt to make atonement for the sins of the world. And the letter to the Hebrews, the writer says rightly that even that high priest himself was not qualified, because only the perfect man could go into that space. And so St. Mark records, just as at the baptism of Christ, we are told that the heavens were torn open and the Spirit descended, like a huge mothership descended upon the baptismal moment. So, at what Jesus called his baptism, his chalice, the temple veil is torn. There is no longer any division between God and man. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Station number 13. Jesus is placed in the arms of his mother. What parent wants to hold their dead child? I think if any of us as mums and dads had a wish, could guarantee one thing, it would be this, wouldn't it? That the predeceasing goes the right way, that we die before them, that they are at our graveside, not the other way around. That this is the ultimate moment of pain for Mary of Nazareth. Remember when she presented the child at the temple and Simeon said, "And a sword will pierce your heart also." I've often wondered if I said that at christenings, what would happen? Would there be a riot if I turned around to mum and dad and said, "Truly, if this person is to be a Christian, a sword will pierce their heart also. This is going to cost. This is going to be extremely challenging." And in Mary's perspective as well, we see that it's not just about one man. But if Mary represents, in a sense, the whole of humanity, it is about a very special grief. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. And so the concluding station, Jesus is buried into the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. There would have been very clear undertakings and ways of doing this, of wrapping the body, of putting the stone in front of the tomb. It would have been part of the catharsis, part of the appropriate rituals, practical, spiritual, and yet, for all involved, utterly devastating. Here was the one whom which so many had put their hopes in. The one who had raised the dead, cured lepers, given sight to the blind, proclaimed God's kingdom on earth, peace and goodwill to all, love of enemies. And it all seems to have come to a most terrible end. How will this story conclude? Where will it go? Well, maybe that's why we call it Good Friday. We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because through your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. So that comes to the conclusion of our Stations of the Cross today. Thank you for tuning into this. Later on today at 3, I'll be live streaming prayers around the cross with readings. Send me your prayers and I will place them on the cross. We'll come out to the veranda again. It's a strangely beautiful and eerie day. We've had this incredible weather, as if the earth is renewing itself. May this day also renew us spiritually. God bless. Thank you.